The candles burned low over the long oak table, and the room buzzed with laughter that was not meant to be kind. Cornelis van der Berg sat perfectly still, his wine untouched, his face calm as stone. Around him, English merchants leaned close to one another, whispering jokes about the silent Dutchman who could not understand a single word they said. He heard every one of them. He understood every insult, every sneer, every plan to cheat him out of his rightful contract. But he said nothing. He simply nodded when his translator spoke, and let them believe he was as lost as a man in a foreign fog. It was a dangerous game, and Cornelis knew it well. He had built his fortune on patience, on watching men reveal their true faces when they thought no one could read them. Tonight, the guild leaders wanted his silk contracts, his spice routes, his years of hard work, and they intended to take it all with clever words dressed as friendship. He let them talk. He let them plot. He kept his eyes low and his expression blank, waiting for the moment when their greed would show its edges. Across the table, a young woman in a gown the color of deep sapphire watched him with quiet interest. She was Lady Eleanor Ashworth, soon to be married to the Duke of Whitmore, and she had been seated near the mysterious merchant as a courtesy to her future husband's business partners. At first, she paid him little attention, but something about the way his jaw tightened at certain remarks caught her notice. A man who understood nothing should not flinch at a joke made in a language he supposedly could not speak. One of the merchants, a sharp-tongued man named Edward Colton, raised his glass and made a cruel remark about the Dutchman's clothes, calling him a merchant who dressed like a beggar pretending to be a lord. The table erupted in laughter. Cornelis kept his face still, but his hand tightened around the stem of his glass just slightly, just enough. Eleanor saw it. Her sharp mind began working, piecing together small clues that others had missed entirely. She leaned back in her chair, studying him more carefully now. His eyes moved too quickly when certain words were spoken. His breathing changed at the right moments. He was not confused. He was listening, absorbing, storing every careless word for later use. She had spent years around clever men who hid their intentions behind pleasant smiles, and she recognized the pattern instantly. As the dinner continued, the plotting grew bolder. The merchants began discussing openly, right at the table, how they might alter the terms of the contract once Cornelis signed it, confident he would never know the difference. Eleanor's stomach tightened with unease. She glanced at the quiet Dutchman once more, and this time their eyes met for just a moment. In that instant, she understood something the others in the room did not. The Dutchman was not lost at all. He was waiting. Eleanor's heart pounded as she watched Edward Colton lean toward another merchant and whisper about switching numbers in the final agreement, numbers that would rob Cornelis of a fortune without him ever noticing. She had heard enough. Something inside her refused to sit quietly while a man was cheated right in front of her, even if he was a stranger from a foreign land. She turned toward him, keeping her voice low, and spoke words that made the room around her disappear. She spoke in flawless Dutch, warning him gently that the men across the table meant to trick him, and that he should read every line of the contract twice before signing anything. Cornelis froze. For a heartbeat, his carefully built mask cracked completely. His eyes widened, his lips parted, and he nearly knocked over his wine glass in shock. No one at this English dinner was supposed to know his language. No one was supposed to see through his disguise so easily. He caught himself quickly, forcing his expression back into practiced confusion, glancing around to see if anyone else had noticed his reaction. Thankfully, the other guests were too busy with their own conversations, too drunk on wine and self-satisfaction to notice the silent exchange between the merchant and the future Duchess. Eleanor kept her face calm, sipping her drink as though she had said nothing more than a comment about the weather. Cornelis turned toward her slowly, studying her with new eyes. This was no ordinary noblewoman. Her Dutch was smooth and natural, not the stiff, practiced sentences of someone who had merely studied books. She spoke like someone who had once lived among his people, who had grown up hearing the language in markets and homes and streets. He wondered how a future Duchess of England had come to carry such a secret skill, and why she had chosen in this moment to reveal it only to him. Under the cover of clinking glasses and loud laughter, they began a quiet conversation, hidden in plain sight. She asked him softly why he pretended not to understand English at all. He admitted, with a faint and careful smile, that silence often revealed more truth than questions ever could. Men spoke freely around those they believed could not understand them, and in that freedom, they exposed their true intentions. Alina found herself intrigued rather than alarmed by his honesty. She had spent her life surrounded by polished manners and careful lies, and here was a man willing to admit, in whispered Dutch, that he used deception as a shield rather than a weapon. She promised him she would say nothing of what she had discovered, at least for now, and he thanked her with a small, grateful nod that carried more meaning than any words could. As the dinner wore on, the two continued speaking quietly, switching between polite English nothings for the benefit of watching eyes and honest Dutch words meant only for each other. Neither of them yet understood how deeply this strange, quiet alliance would change the paths their lives were about to take. Later that evening, after the guests had scattered into smaller groups near the fireplace, Alina found a quiet corner where Cornelis stood alone, pretending to study a painting on the wall. She approached him without hesitation, her curiosity too strong to ignore any longer. In hushed Dutch, she asked him directly how a merchant from Amsterdam had learned to read English faces so well, and why he trusted her enough to keep speaking once his secret had already slipped. Cornelis studied her for a long moment before answering. He explained that trust was not something he gave easily, but her warning at the table had already proven her intentions were honest. A woman who wished to expose him would have laughed loudly and called attention to his lie in front of everyone. Instead, she had chosen quiet protection over public humiliation, and that choice told him everything he needed to know about her character. In return, Alina shared her own story. She explained that her father had served as an English diplomat in Amsterdam for many years during her childhood, and that she had grown up playing in Dutch streets, learning the language from friends, market sellers, and neighbors long before she ever returned to England. Dutch had become, in many ways, a second home to her, a private world that few people in her current life knew existed. Cornelis listened closely, surprised by how easily she spoke of her past, how little effort it took for her to trust him with such personal details. He admitted that he rarely met anyone in England who understood his language, let alone someone who could speak it as naturally as she did. For a moment, the noise of the dinner party faded into the background, replaced by something quieter and more genuine between two people who had unexpectedly found common ground. Their conversation shifted toward the coming marriage. Alina mentioned, with careful and measured words, that she sometimes worried about the men her future husband associated with in business. She had heard whispers, nothing certain, but enough to cause unease, about deals that were not always fair, and partners who were not always honest. Cornelis's expression grew serious as he listened, recognizing the same greedy patterns he had witnessed at the dinner table that very night. He offered her a small piece of advice, careful not to overstep his place as a stranger and a guest. He suggested that she pay close attention to how the Duke's associates treated those they believed held no power, because a man's true character often revealed itself in such moments. Alina absorbed his words thoughtfully, sensing wisdom in them that went far beyond simple business advice. By the time they returned to the main hall, something had shifted between them, an unspoken understanding built on honesty and mutual respect. Neither could have predicted that this fragile new connection would soon become essential in uncovering a scheme far larger and more dangerous than either of them yet realized. Over the following weeks, Cornelis continued his negotiations with the guild, keeping his disguise firmly in place while carefully documenting every conversation, every promise, every subtle change to the terms being discussed. Alina, using her position as a guest of honor at various gatherings, quietly gathered information of her own, listening closely to conversations that men assumed a future duchess would never care to understand. She discovered troubling details. Edward Colton and several other guild members were not only planning to alter Cornelius's contract, but had done the same to other foreign traders in the past, using confusion and language barriers to steal profits without ever facing consequences. Worse, she learned that some of these same men had close financial ties to associates of the Duke of Whitmore, meaning any public scandal could easily reach into her own future household. Alina passed this information to Cornelis during another quiet meeting, this time in the gardens outside a merchant's estate, where they could speak freely without fear of listening ears. He absorbed the news calmly, though his mind raced with calculations. If he exposed the scheme too early, the guild might simply deny everything and destroy his reputation instead. He needed proof, solid and undeniable, before making any move. Together, they devised a careful plan. Cornelis would continue playing his role as the confused foreign merchant, allowing the guild members to reveal more of their scheme in overconfident conversations. Alina would help him understand the finer details of English law and merchant contracts, translating not language this time, but the complicated customs and loopholes that Cornelis, despite his sharp mind, did not fully grasp as an outsider. Their meetings became more frequent, always brief, always careful, hidden within the busy schedule of wedding preparations and business dinners. Alina found herself both nervous and strangely alive during these secret exchanges, aware that discovery could damage her reputation just as easily as it could expose the guild's dishonesty. Cornelis, for his part, grew more impressed each day by her sharp instincts and quiet courage. Tension grew as the final contract signing approached. Cornelis noticed increased pressure from Edward Colton, who seemed eager to rush the process, pushing him toward signing documents without proper review. Alina warned him that this urgency was likely deliberate, a tactic meant to prevent him from noticing the altered terms hidden within pages of formal legal language. On the night before the signing was scheduled, Cornelis and Alina met one final time, both aware of how much rested on the coming day. She handed him a small folded paper containing notes she had gathered, details about specific clauses to examine closely, and names of witnesses who might confirm the guild's dishonest history if pressed. Cornelis thanked her quietly, understanding that she had risked far more than simple curiosity to help a stranger she barely knew, and that tomorrow would test everything they had carefully built together. The signing hall was crowded the next morning, filled with guild members eager to finalize the contract they believed would quietly cheat a foolish foreign merchant. Cornelis walked in calmly, his documents held firmly under one arm, his expression as unreadable as always. Edward Colton greeted him with a wide, false smile, gesturing toward the papers spread across the table, urging him through a translator to sign quickly so the celebration could begin. Instead of picking up the pen, Cornelis opened his documents and began speaking. His voice was clear, confident, and, to the shock of everyone in the room, spoken in perfect English. He pointed directly to the altered clauses within the contract, explaining exactly how the numbers had been changed from their original agreement. Gasps spread through the hall as guild members exchanged panicked glances, their scheme unraveling in front of witnesses they never expected to understand a single word. Edward Colton attempted to deny everything, insisting it was a simple misunderstanding, but Cornelis calmly presented the notes and witness names Alina had gathered, proof of similar schemes used against other foreign traders in the past. The room fell into stunned silence as the guild's reputation crumbled within minutes, honest merchants among them demanding immediate explanations, while officials were quickly summoned to review the fraudulent documents. Alina, standing quietly near the back of the hall as an invited observer, watched the scene unfold with quiet satisfaction. She caught Cornelis's eye across the crowded room, and though neither of them smiled openly, a silent understanding passed between them, a shared victory earned through patience, trust, and careful planning rather than any dramatic confrontation. In the days that followed, Cornelis secured a fair and honest contract, his original terms fully restored, and his reputation strengthened rather than damaged by the ordeal. Word spread quickly through trading circles about the clever Dutch merchant who had outwitted an entire guild, earning him respect and new business opportunities far beyond what he had originally sought. Elinor's role in uncovering the scheme remained largely private, known only to a few trusted individuals, exactly as she preferred. Her quiet involvement, however, gave her a clearer understanding of the business world her future husband operated within, knowledge that would serve her well in the years ahead as Duchess. She had learned, through her unexpected alliance with Cornelis, that careful observation and quiet courage could accomplish far more than loud accusations ever could. Before Cornelis eventually returned to Amsterdam, the two shared one final conversation, once again in gentle Dutch, away from curious eyes. He thanked her sincerely for her trust and her courage, acknowledging that few people would have risked so much for a stranger. Elinor simply smiled, telling him that recognizing honesty in a dishonest world was a skill worth using whenever the opportunity arose. Their paths, though different, had crossed at exactly the right moment, leaving behind a quiet friendship built on respect, and a story neither of them would ever forget.